G'day, Prime Minister. How are you?
Look, I'm very well. You need to introduce me to your friends.
Yes, thanks so much for the opportunity. And start off with CEO of Headspace, Jason Trethowan, and maybe Jason, you could introduce everybody else.
G'day, Prime Minister. How are you going?
Good, Jason. Good to see you.
Great to see you. I've got Sharon Patton, who's one of our terrific frontline clinicians working in Headspace out at Knox in eastern Melbourne, and we've got Maddie Cameron, who's a university student. And Maddie's one of these fantastic people we have on our national youth reference group for Headspace. And we're just bringing in Oliver Lopez. He's just coming on board now. He's a Year 12 school captain of a big school of 2,000 students in Melbourne. So just trying to get him on now.
Fantastic. Well, we look forward to him joining us in a sec. But look, thanks for joining me. Pat and I had a chat. When was it, Pat? It was a few days ago.
Last Thursday.
At the moment, with everything happening. But as Pat knows, this is one of the areas that really, really trouble me. Not just now that we're in COVID, but it's particularly made a lot worse during COVID, and particularly for young people in Victoria and Melbourne even more specifically. And I've always understood from the engagement I've had with particularly Pat, but how Headspace has so changed the whole landscape in terms of how young people can get access to mental health support services. I've seen it in my own community in the Shire in Sydney and across the country. And as you know, we've been rolling out those services now for some time and expanding them. I think every time Pat comes and asks this, he always leaves pretty happy. But that's because out of respect for what Headspace does. And I know one of the big challenges you've got, as Pat was saying when we last spoke, is working to a model which is reaching out rather than people coming in. And I remember last year when I was with Jenny, and we went and visited the centre out in Ashfield, and we spoke to the young workers there. And that was, a big shift in the way Headspace was working, getting out and about, reaching out into shopping centres and schools and other places and connecting to where people were at. But with the demand at the moment, particularly given what's been happening in Melbourne, I mean, the anguish and anxiety for Melburnians generally is very, very difficult. But I was particularly concerned about young people, particularly finishing off their leaving years at high school. I mean, it was a long time ago for me and you, Pat, but when, those years are stressful enough, but to have all of this happening around it, and what does all that mean, and the anxiety and expectations, that's a lot of pressure. And Pat said to me, look, it's not just those young people, it's those at university and in many other situations. So he said you needed more, and so happy to provide it, and it'll keep coming because I was most distressed to hear about those core boards and some of the difficult decisions you are having to make in Headspace about which calls to take. Now, that's not okay. And I was really pleased to see what Dan did too with upping that mental health package as well, more broadly for Victoria. So those two things working together, I hope is making a difference. But really today, Pat, was just, given we'd have such a good chat, I wanted just to hear from a few others about how you're seeing it and how it's playing out and where some of the stresses are, and so I can better understand.
Well, look, thank you so much for taking such a personal interest in it. It's really incredibly inspiring for us to hear that, and we know we can count on you to support the young people that we're looking after. So just want to say that and hand over to Jason and the team, really.
Thanks, Pat.
Yeah, look, Prime Minister, we've had a chat with a number of school principals and of course many young people just in recent times around their Year 12 and what's happening there, and the words of uncertainty, and they're missing out on those functions and those end of year achievements. And as one young fellow said this morning, that it was tough already, and it's just COVID's just been that added pressure down. And look, the schools are doing a fantastic job in what they can do, but that sense of disconnection as a result of going online, we know that that's hugely problematic. But we're trying to keep pace with better connecting with schools and getting them to know that Headspace is there for them. And obviously Sharon will talk a bit about some of the challenges around meeting that on the ground. But maybe let's talk to Maddie, who's at university, Prime Minister. And Maddie, do you want to just give us your perspective on how things are going and what your peers and your friends are saying in Melbourne?
Yeah, sure. So lovely to meet you, Prime Minister. And as Jason said, I'm from Melbourne, and I'm currently part of Headspace's National Youth Reference Group, and I'm also studying occupational therapy at uni, and I'm currently in my second year. So mainly I'd like to just kind of discuss what I'm experiencing, what I'm observing currently being at uni, but also the help seeking in young people at the moment due to COVID. So kind of at the moment, the main concern for my peers at uni is about being able to graduate and find stable employment, and as well as going into workforce feeling work ready and competent. And mainly this is due to the limited opportunities due to COVID for face-to-face placements. And I actually had a placement cancelled this semester, but I'm lucky because most of my placements start in the next couple of years. So I think the main concern is how long COVID is going to go on and how this is going to affect the progression of people's study. And I think the main concern for a lot of people is whether not doing face-to-face placements, will they graduate and into the workplace feeling competent to, as well as having the competencies to work in a face-to-face setting, in real life settings. And I think particularly this is compounded by a lot of students losing casual work because mainly they're employed in casual work in hospitality and retail, which has been quite dramatically affected as well. So I think there's a real need for increasing the capacity for support services for students graduating university and entering the workplace so they can find and maintain stable employment. So I think that's really important. And the other thing I'm also concerned about, as someone who's got a lived experience of mental health, are for the students at university already with pre-existing mental health conditions, and how the regular support structures may not be enough at the moment to keep them engaged in education. And I think personally my uni has done a really good job supporting students, to the best of their ability at the moment. But I do think there's a need to engage in students in a greater capacity so they don't disengage in education. So I think that's really important. And the other thing
they've been doing to help that engagement, you said it's been working well. What are some of the successful things they've done?
So I think,
hey Oliver.
Yeah, so I think what I've experienced is I got a phone call from the university, just kind of a check-in to say, how are you going? How are you finding online study? And there's also been regular emails that have listed support services, so like study support, financial, mental health, physical health, and regular updates about current information, as well as also a lot of my teachers have been sharing information about things like that too. But I suppose my main concern is for the students already kind of registered with, support services at uni, and whether they need extra support as well from uni to make sure that they're not slipping through the cracks, and so they don't disengage and continue their education, as well as, complete their education to their potential as well. So I think that's really important.
It's incredibly disruptive impact
definitely.
of all of this. I mean, it's certainly, as you're describing it, just the continuity of education, but also, for everyone right across the board, whether it's been their employment, how they look after their children, how they look after elderly loved ones, and a family, how it operates businesses. It's just a very just unimaginably disruptive event. And that disruption, I'm sure, Pat, just sort of clinically, can only have that type of impact on everyone. But I agree with you particularly about people coming, whether it's out of uni and looking to go into employment, or those coming out of school. I mean, of course, we're worried about everybody who's currently in a job and trying to keep them in a job, but sadly that won't be possible in all circumstances. But we also know come the end of the year, next year, there'll be a lot of school leavers coming out, and what does it mean for them? And that's one of the reasons we did the training places and the apprenticeship stuff with the states. And all the premiers and I that's been something that's been pretty high on our list, not just to do with people who are in jobs now, but will be seeking jobs because of either coming out of training or out of school or something like that. So that is going to be a challenge. That's why we've got to get the economy moving again. That's the only one. We saw some good employment data, even though it was a horrific number of 1 million people, but we're also seeing jobs still being created. And for young people in particular, they've been the most affected by the job losses. But we've also seen the young jobs come back very quickly too. They've been the first jobs to come back. So hopefully that gives hope.
Well, could I just jump in there and remind you that you funded a program to strengthen Headspace when you were Social Services Minister, and this was the Vocational Recovery Program, and it's now in 25 of the 140 odd Headspaces, and so I think that is an incredibly important sort of thing that you've already contributed to in your previous role, and something that obviously what Maddie's saying is even more needed now across Australia more than ever, really.
It sounds like, Maddie, you're saying people are just craving that stability wherever they can find it. Because there's a lot of it to be found.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I think, and also the fear of what's to come, I suppose, the not being able to plan ahead, is definitely there's a lot of anxiety and I suppose unease about that, about planning for the future. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, it's always the issue in a crisis like that. You've got to focus on what you can affect rather than what you can't.
Exactly.
And there are a lot of unknowns in all this. And I wish I could say when it was going to end or when a vaccine would come and how long that would take. And I had someone I know in a sector just get in touch with me this morning. When will venues be able to go to a particular size? Because they're trying to plan events and do things. And there's no answer to that at this point. So coping with the uncertainty is a big challenge. I'm sure that's Jason coming through a lot on the core boards, and I suspect Sharon, you're seeing that out there in Knox.
Absolutely, lots of anxiety and uncertainties from young people and also from parents. I think we're seeing a lot of parent conflict, a lot of family conflict, parents struggling supporting their young people, lots of increased risk presentations, suicide risk, and we're struggling with knowing where to send them and support them immediately. Unfortunately, we have no choice often but to put them on wait lists for psychologists. There's little incentive for psychologists in the private sector to work with high-risk young people. So that gap, as we're all aware, between the acute immediate risk and the low level is always a challenge. So we're working very hard to try and support the families to support these young people at the moment when access to other services, particularly face-to-face, is diminished.
How are you finding, one of the things we've seen on that Christine Morgan, who's the heads up the Mental Health Commission and is the National Suicide Prevention Advisor, she's been showing us the very significant uptake in telehealth for mental health services. That is really it's pleased me that it's been so effective. About half of all those consults are now being done through telehealth, and so the Medicare provider, etc., has facilitated that significantly. So the total number of actual consults being done is actually up in total on what it was previously. And obviously our biggest concern was in COVID that some of these services might get restricted and we couldn't get to people and provide them with that clinical care. But telehealth seems to be really meeting that mark. I hope that's your experience. How are you finding it?
It is. It's certainly very helpful and helping us to reach young people that, particularly out in the remote areas, they're feeling quite isolated and stuck. So it's helping us to reach more people that maybe we couldn't have reached before. In terms of clinical depth, the telehealth services are a little more superficial. It's very hard to get that real therapy and the depth of therapeutic work done by telehealth, and particularly those with...
Is that because of the medium or is that because of who's participating?
I think it's more because of the medium.
Right.
Young people are feeling, some don't want to bring that trauma into their home.
Right.
Some don't feel secure in their home environment to be able to pick at those wounds without that face-to-face support.
Yeah.
Some don't have the confidentiality or the technology within the environment. So they're more holding sessions, we're finding.
Yeah.
I think as people are getting used to it and becoming more and more familiar, we'll get a little bit further into the depth of the therapy.
Yeah. And you were saying, Pat, that you've been out there literally on the ground in a lot of homes, and I'm assuming, Sharon, you've done similarly. And so when you're getting many opportunities to do that in this environment, and how are you finding that's helping?
Can you repeat that? Sorry, it cut out just then.
Well, I know you're also doing direct home visits as well, reaching out to people. And Pat, you're saying you were doing that the other weekend and been out in a number of homes. That's obviously difficult at the moment, but obviously those types of services are essential services, and you're able to keep doing them.
Well, that's what you very kindly supported us with last week, and Jason, he might like to tell you what he's done about that since we spoke. But that is definitely a missing ingredient. The capacity to do that, as Sharon was saying, is pretty limited. We have these waiting lists. So what you approved last week was critical, I think, in making that more possible for those young people like the one I told you about. Whose lives are in danger actually as we speak. So if we can't respond quickly and dynamically to those and agilely to those young people, then they're definitely at risk. And so we very much appreciate that commitment last week, which is helping.
How's that rolling out, Jason?
Yeah, look, it's within a week we designed a program logic with the department and a rapid engagement with people like Sharon to say what's the best way to get this money rolling. We've got a meeting with all the 29 Victorian centres on Monday, and they'll be told here's the basis for the funding, and here's the process, and money will be out the door late next week, and we're telling them to get ready. And what they've actually said was that the funding will help relieve some of their frontline workforce at the moment, which will allow their more skilled workforce and more experienced workforce to do some of that boots on the ground in home visits and in other ways of reaching out to young people. But the other thing, Prime Minister, we're doing is really focusing in on how to build the bridge better with schools and identify some of those pathways. We've been talking to Christine about this as an area of great focus to help schools inform young people to get priority access into headspace centres so they can get services sooner, because they're the ones we're worried about. They've got lists of young people they're worried about, and we're saying, well, let's build the relationships and the pathways, and I've got no doubt that'll happen. We've never moved as fast as we've ever had before, and I know that was in the spirit of the money that was given to us directly, to us work directly with the providers like Sharon, and everyone's working full throttle to get that going. So thank you so much. Look, across the 29 centres, it'll be something, and we really do appreciate that. And obviously, we'll use it in the best way we can. And we're really thankful for people like Sharon and others, and Maddie and other young people.
Pick up the phone as we did the other day.
I think that works beautifully. We need you, Prime Minister, for this. Absolutely, we need your sense of urgency. The risk at the moment that we're feeling is uncomfortable. And your direct action with Pat last Thursday, and we just mobilised it since to follow through on your sense of urgency. So thank you.
And the other thing to say about that is that you managed to bypass the red tape of the primary health networks, which was very, very, very good step.
It was a call in the morning. It was an announcement in the afternoon. It moved pretty quick and got on to Greg Hunt. Maddie, you're advising Headspace as well as being supported in the past. I understand before as well, and you're a student yourself, as you've said. What's the advice you're giving to Headspace about what it does and how it works? Yeah.
In terms of my
what are the
role.
insights you're being able to feed into Jason and Pat and the whole board team and the role that you and your other co-members of the group you're part of? I mean, where are you seeing the ways that they've been able to, you know, make greater progress?
I think part of the amazing work Headspace does is because they everything that they do is led by a youth perspective. So anything that say it be a policy, some resources, anything like that is informed by someone who in our group or in the wider community that is currently in the age group. And I think that's been really important, especially during COVID, because we're living the reality of going through the pandemic. So we can feed it back and go, this is what I'm experiencing. This is what my peers are experiencing. This is what we're feeling. This is what we're struggling with. And that can help inform them when they make kind of the big decisions about how to go about their work.
Thanks for doing that. Now, is that Oliver?
Yes, it is. Hi, everyone.
How are
Sorry
you, mate?
for
We
that.
got a quick glimpse of you a little while ago. And,
Yeah, I came in, but the audio was inaudible. I couldn't hear anything, so I had to.
So
Yeah,
how
sorry.
are you doing? How are things
Yeah,
going?
very good, thank you.
How are things at school?
Yeah, traveling well. We've adjusted to online learning quite quickly, so yeah, just going through it now.
So how are your peers feeling going, you know, we're in the back half of the year. I mean, certainly speaks for itself, but how are people supporting each other in your school? And, you know, you're the skipper down there, so you're leading them. So thank you for the leadership you're providing in your school.
My pleasure. The main consensus of what I've sort of gathered is that a lot of people are sort of losing hope at this stage. Usually this is sort of the time in the year where people are sort of kicking into gear, seeing the end goal, the exams, they're sort of, you know, really thriving. But what I've seen is people are sort of becoming really anxious and scared because they're realizing that we can't really control the future. We don't know what it holds. And it's just become a really scary realization for many people. And going on from stuff that if people have experienced mental health issues before year 12, this sort of COVID period has just pushed them to a sort of another level of anxiety and sort of fear. And it's really led to a lack of motivation in not only people that had pre-existing issues, but quite a widespread amount of people, as well as just the tendency to sort of give up. People can't see that end goal, and people are sort of just not really knowing where to go, knowing where to put their efforts, and sort of just not doing anything at all.
And is there an awareness, Oliver, about the help that's there? I mean, it's one of the things that can be frustrating from a government point of view. I mean, there are a lot of programs and there are great organisations, Headspace obviously one of them, but there are plenty of others as well, Kids Helpline and Lifeline and so on, doing tremendous work, BeyondBlue, etc. Is there a greater awareness amongst, you know, your peers?
I know at our school.
And same question to you, really. That what's there, that they don't have to deal with this on their own. Of course, they've got their mates to talk to, but even if they need better than, you know, the consoling elbow, because that's all you can do now, of a mate, but and a call, but there's other professional services that are there.
Yeah, what I've seen, especially for our school specifically, is that we've seen a lot more people sort of having referrals to the wellbeing team. They're becoming a lot more aware of it. Maybe they weren't aware of it before. And it's sort of been, the whole approach we've taken more is that through support, we're going to give support, and we're here, everyone as a collective. So I do feel, as people in our community especially have realized, that there is lots of support, and that's only the first step. If they need to go beyond that, outside our school community, there is steps to be taken there. And also with the friend situation, I have seen a lot personally where people are sort of opening those channels to friends a lot more because we are in isolation. They're sort of valuing that, which is sort of, you know, an afternoon call with a mate, or, you know, talking to their family a lot more as well, which I have seen a lot more awareness for that as well.
That's good. And you, Maddie, you're finding at uni that there's people understand that there is a lot of help out there, that people don't have to do this alone?
Yeah, I think there is a growing awareness that there is help available, and I think people are becoming more open to talking about it. I think, though, one of the main struggles a lot of people who are young are facing is because of the unemployment rate, and they are finding it quite difficult to afford to seek help. Like I know there's a lot of increases in Medicare at the moment, which is amazing, but often young people still can't even afford that gap payment. So that's probably a really kind of current issue. It's not so much that they don't know what's out there, it's more about being able to really access it practically.
And Sharon, as sort of Headspace has moved more into this outreach mode, not just the incoming, the outgoing, what have you found in Knox that has been most successful to help Headspace reach out into your community?
Partnerships with schools, absolutely. And yeah, reaching out, being accessible where they are, and particularly in our region, young people can't often access us. It's a 2 or 3 hour bus trip to reach us. So school partnerships, school integration, and the doctors in schools has been very helpful in that regard. But definitely getting out into the schools, into the universities, and trying to be available where the young people are at.
Yeah. Well, Pat, it's a bit of one of those days, and there'll be a gang of media outside soon who want me to come and answer a whole bunch of questions, which I'm happy to do. But I've found this really helpful, and hopefully we can do it again with as bring groups together. I know Josh Frydenberg he's a Melburnian. He's been raising these issues, and he controls the purse strings. So he's been tremendously supportive of ensuring we move quickly into these mental health areas, and you've seen the Premier do the same thing. So there is just, I think from all of us, whether it's myself as Prime Minister, other ministers, premiers, it is about trying to work out the best way to get this support in, and that's partly why I wanted to have a chat to you today, largely to just understand how these connections can be made and we can make these programs work as best as they possibly can. We know there's going to be more needed, and we just want to know that each time we take a step, we're taking it in the right direction. And as you were saying, Maddie, you want Headspace to be making those decisions, listening to what you're saying. I mean, I'm the same. We want to get that back. I've got wonderful advisors who tell me all these things, but equally, it's great to hear direct from you guys. And good luck, Oliver, as you go into the back half of this year. And you too, Maddie, as you go through the back half of this year to conclude your studies. And Sharon, thanks for the amazing work you do. It's a calling, what you do. It's and I know I'm sure you're as passionate about every other person I've met in Headspace. This is something you believe in strongly. So you've got a great team there, Jason. You should be very proud of them. I'm sure you are. And Pat, I'm always amazed about what Headspace has done. It's an extraordinary organisation, and for me as a Prime Minister, and knowing that when things get really tough, that we know that organisation is there, that we can go there straight away, we can make a decision. And Jason, you can turn this around so quickly, and so many other organisations, certainly that weren't around when I left school and when Pat left school, that's there now, and you guys are making it even stronger. So thanks for all of your leadership, and thanks for what you're doing. And as I said, we're all Melburnians now. I don't know much about AFL, but certainly with you guys in terms of giving you every support you need. And Pat, keep on that phone, mate. You need anything, you let me know. Thanks very much, everyone, for joining me.
Authorised by S. Morrison, Liberal Party, Canberra.